Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Justin do tōku ingoa, he pau tātaki a hou ki te kaipara moana remediation. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's great to see so many people online. Today's focus, as been mentioned, is an introduction to KMR. Today we'll run over the foundations for KMR, the program progress to date, and where we're heading next. There are other webinars that are more specialised, so nonetheless we've had a huge evolution in the program over the last few months, and so we're hopeful that even if you've been on our previous webinars or know the program, that you'll learn something today. Kia ora. So what is KMR here to do? Well, our purpose is to protect and restore the kaipara moana, and as you'll all know, it's a very special place. Not only is it the largest natural harbour in the Southern Hemisphere, it's also one of the largest harbours in the world. It's important from an ecological perspective, but also a cultural, a recreational, and an economic perspective. But it's not just the harbour that's important. The catchment is also very, very significant. As you can see from the slide, covers 600,000 hectares. So KMR works in the kaipara moana ecological catchment. Our catchment spans 2 regions. About a third of the catchment is in Auckland, the rest in Northland. And the catchment also comprises 7 major river systems, which essentially go from top to bottom and from east to west. Those river systems have a very large number of subcatchments and microcatchments, all of which drain into the kaipara moana. KMR invests in a lot of trees, and so it's important to note that the catchment spans 9 eco-districts. What that means for us is that we eco-source our plants. We will plant trees in areas that are appropriate for them. Next slide, thanks, Ben. So what problem are we trying to solve when we protect and restore the moana? Well, sediment is really the problem in this catchment. Many of you will be aware there's a very, very large amount of sediment flowing from the land into the moana every year, an estimated 700,000 tonnes. That's a really large amount. Sediment's a problem because when our valuable soils wash off the land and go into our rivers, our streams, and the moana, they actually carry with them a number of other contaminants that not only affect environmental health, but can also affect human and animal health. Generally, people are aware that silts, sediments, muds are a problem when they sit on the riverbed or the seabed. Fewer people are aware of the problem when sediments are suspended in the waterways. That reduces the ability of light to penetrate into the water to support life forms. And many of the life forms in the moana are really important, not just economically, but also culturally and recreationally. So we know that sediment is having a really large impact on those many values of the harbour. KMR is a very science-based program, and we draw a lot on the expertise of the science system. Next slide. So all harbours have values to people who live around them, local values, ecological values, recreational, cultural values. The kaipara moana is actually unique in that it has national values and economic values that are very, very significant. Our friends from NIWA, the National Institute for Water and Atmosphere Research, one of the Crown Research Institutes, demonstrated that almost all of New Zealand's snapper fishery comes from the kaipara. The kaipara moana is actually the nursery for juvenile snapper. What this means is that the kaipara moana, unlike other catchments or harbours, has a really significant national economic value. And you can see on the slide that there are really large annual export benefits, values from the harbour, from the snapper fishery, as well as jobs and contribution to the economy, to GDP. We know that sediment is already affecting the snapper fishery, and KMR's interest is to avoid a snapper fishery collapse. That is going to lead to not only losses in 1 year from an economic and financial job perspective, but ongoing problems and impacts. Next slide. So our long-term aspiration is to halve the sediment runoff from the land into the moana, turning off the sediment tap, if you like. We are a pretty new program. We have been operationally fully operational for 22 months. We're scaling up extremely quickly. And we're unapologetic about our narrow focus on sediment. Our job is to retire and plant waterways and erosion-prone land in the Kaipara ecological catchment. We build on the shoulders of others. We're an operational program that builds on number of earlier initiatives, including the Integrated Kaipara Harbour Management Group. And we're a decade-long program with an intent, I guess, for an intergenerational program. Next slide. KMR works in some pretty specific ways. Back in October 2020, a Memorandum of Understanding was signed with the Crown, Kaipara Uri, and the 2 regional councils, with district council representation also there. And that really set the foundations for how we operate. Next slide. The deed of funding with the Crown, which came through in February 2021, also set some very specific design intent for KMR as a program. We're funded by MFE. It's a $100 million contract through the Jobs for Nature investment. As a result, we have a dual focus on environmental outcomes, but also around investing in people. We like to say that we grow people while we grow trees. We have a particular requirement that's really important to understand around matched co-funding. To unlock $1 of Crown funding, the landowner or a third party, another person or party, needs to contribute $1 worth of value. That's often in kind, it's often time, but that contribution is needed or required to unlock the Crown investment. KMR works directly with landowners, and that's because landowners sign the KMR contract to unlock our grant funding, but also because the works are often on their land. In some cases, we invest in projects and contracts with other groups who have landowner permission to do project works on their land, and you'll hear more about that soon. We're a voluntary program. We work with the willing. Because of the size of our catchment, we often work with and through others. In fact, that's our design intent. Some of our strategic and delivery partners are shown here. I'd just like to call out 2 in particular, although they're all important. The first is the Ministry of Social Development, MSD. Together, we have invested in a kaitiaki employment coordinator over the last coming up 2 years to really facilitate training and development into career pathways facilitated by KMR. The second partner I'd like to call out today is the New Zealand Association of Resource Management. Together, we're really looking to develop formal qualifications for some of the field advisors who are working with us in the program to really develop long-term, sustainable, nature-based employment. And that's particularly local, often rural and remote employment. Next slide.
Kia ora tātou. My name's Lizette Rawson. I'm the Operations Manager for Kaipara Moana Remediation, and I'll talk you through the next few slides. How do we do it? So we reach out to landowners and community groups. We have partnership forums. And some of our partners who are on the previous slide will go to places like AMP shows and Northland Field Days, where landowners can sign up for an expression of interest. You can also access us through our website and through the Honol email, which you'll see in one of the later slides. So once they reach out, landowner or community group, to KMR, we will initially make a triage phone call. Make sure that you're ready to receive a field advisor now. You might want to wait, or you might want to know more about what we fund. And once we establish that you're ready for a field advisor, we'd allocate you a field advisor who would come out to your land and walk the land with you and walk through the issues and the risks and that sort of thing, understanding the erosion and the sediment issues that you're facing there. A sediment reduction plan is then established, and that would outline all of the activities that the landowner or the community group have discussed with the field advisor. So that could be a range of fencing, a range of planting, and hopefully a range of both. That sediment reduction plan is then submitted to Kaipara Moana Remediation. We review it and make sure it's in line with our criteria, and then we would contract it once it's approved, and after that the work can begin. We pay up to 50% of the estimated project costs that are outlined in that document. Next slide, please, Ben. So we have two grant types. We have our landowner grant, which is a one-to-one relationship with a landowner. Again, the field advisor would work with them. It's up to 50% of the estimated project costs. For dairy farmers, if we were to receive an expression of interest from a dairy farmer, we would first engage with Fonterra because they have a tiaki plan that they will develop, and we use that tiaki plan to unlock the co-funding for KMR. Next slide, please, Ben. Our second grant type is the Whenua Whānui Fund. So this is a one-to-many relationship. It could be a community group, a catchment group, iwi hapu, marae, ahu whenua trust. We work to support activities on collectively owned land, and we can fund up to 70% of the estimated project costs. So the range of remediation that we fund across both funds is the same: fencing, planting, troughs and gates where applicable, site preparation and maintenance. But for Whenua Whānui Fund, we can also provide a modest amount to project overhead, such as community education, administration and the like. Next slide, please, Ben. This is a map that shows how broadly we are working across, just for Whenua Whānui Fund projects. We have a number that have been completed, and the community group is looking at their second year of activity. There are some in progress, and there are many more in the design stage. It can take a little bit more time to get a Whenua Whānui Fund to contract because we're working with multiple people. Next slide, please, Ben. And here, the next few slides are some examples of places that we have been working through the Whenua Whānui Fund. So it's Ohukura, Kaiwaka. You'll be able to see that one from the State Highway, and Puapua Creek Restoration.
Thanks, Lizette. So just in terms of the program's results or achievements over the last 21 months, we've met many of our targets, most of them in fact, and I'm really proud of the team's contribution and achievements working with and through our delivery partners. So in terms of accreditations, we've worked with 28 local businesses and 20 nurseries to accredit them as KMR suppliers. Those are based all around the catchment. In fact, really equitably spread, which is good to see. We've also trained 57 people as our KMR field advisors, those boots on the ground whom Lizette mentioned that work alongside the landowners. Many of them are from the local iwi and hapu, and some of them are job changers, women, younger rangatahi. We've invested more than $11.5 million in project value so far to date. That's as at 30 September. And that's created an estimated 190,000 hours of new work up until 30 June this year. So that's a lot of work that's local, nature-based employment. In terms of engagement, it's often a bit invisible around the catchment being so large, but we're now working with over 1 in 3 landowners in the catchment. We've engaged with, these figures are 30 September, they'll be out of date now, but engaged with 660 landowners. We've essentially completed 509 sediment reduction plans. That's either landowners finished their project or contracted to deliver their projects. And we have a further 113 plans in development. Some of those will not proceed for various reasons, but it's a really strong pipeline of landowner interest. And to get to that point, we've worked with thousands of meetings, thousands of engagements across the community and across different types of engagements. And in fact, I would be surprised if it's not 10,000. So in terms of our achievements, in terms of environmental outcomes, We hit our 1,000,000th tree mark back in July this year, which was really encouraging. That was 19 months into the program. We've met our fencing and planting targets, as I mentioned. Our fencing, either completed or contracted at the end of September, is the same distance as Cape Reinga down to Hamilton, so a very long way. And nearly 100,000 hectares are now managed under KMR plans. Our hectareages under planting are a little bit smaller than you might expect, but that's just because we've been working mainly in narrow riparian margins to date and in halos around wetlands. So it's a large hectareage when you consider that we've mainly been working in the waterway adjacent space. Next slide. That said, and I just want to shout out to those landowners who've been affected. We've had floods, we've had 2 cyclones, we've had an ex-tropical cyclone, we've had a number of storms, and of course, we have economic headwinds and labour market constraints. There are a number of challenges facing our landowners, particularly when they need to work with us to demonstrate and unlock our co-funding through their own contributions. Despite these challenges, I think the program's in good heart and we're supporting our landowners as we can. We stood up a KMR Cyclone Recovery Fund and worked with landowners to restore. That said, there's a lot to do, as this photo will demonstrate. So as I mentioned, up until pretty recently, KMR had been working around waterways only. So we'd been doing riparian management, we'd been restoring wetlands, native gullies that had waterways right next to steep escarpments, if you like, leaching right into the moana or directly into waterways. As of September, we're now co-funding projects right across our landscapes, and that opens up a number of new opportunities for landowners and for our suppliers. Some examples of the type of regimes that we now co-invest in are shown on the slide. And I'd just like to call out some of the regenerating native bush features and silver pasture too. Native afforestation at scale is something that we're really keen on, as well as even mixed natives and exotic woodlots. We haven't yet made any policy decisions on constructed features. What that means for those who are unsure is that can be things like constructed wetlands or sediment traps. We have a bit more policy work to do on those features, but in principle, we are open to exploring all cost-effective options to remediate loss of sediment from the land. Thank you. Next slide.
So as Justine mentioned, from September, we extended what we could fund, and we are now funding activity in the hill country for high erosion risk areas identified there. You'll see on the far right of this image that there are some high erosion risks in colour. So where there is a sediment risk layer where the degree slope is over 15, there's observations that there is active erosion taking place, or the land use capability is 4E, 6E and 7E. That's where we'll start looking at different planting regimes to help keep the soil on the land. Next slide, please. So this is the range of things that we can now fund. We have always been able to fund anything that's waterway adjacent, but we are now looking at funding silver pasture, alternative non-pine exotic species, and I just want to highlight that the expression of interest should be submitted by next Monday, the 13th of November, and space planting of poplars. So we can take an expression of interest for that at any time, but by the 31st of March, so we can work with the poplar nurseries for those collaterals. Next slide, please. And this is our email. So if you don't happen to stumble across a field advisor or one of the KMR staff out in the community, and you would like to, you have a specific question about your land from today, or you would like to submit an expression of interest, you can go to our website or you can go to this email and one of the staff will respond to you in due course. Next slide, please. Kia ora.
Great, yeah, so now we're sort of opening up to any questions. If anyone wants any sort of further information or to clarify anything, you can either just raise your hand or pop it in the chat or pop your mic on and ask. Is there any questions?
How do you find that plan that map you showed that showed the colours of the steeper land? I'd quite like to see that on my land. Yes, that one. Quite like to see that picture of my land.
I'm happy to answer that. Look,
Yeah.
we've invested. KMR is a science-led agency. We've invested really significantly in working with science providers across the country, and we're really pleased to say we've also worked with regional councils to develop some pretty smart layers. It's a mapping layer that sits under Mate Onakura. That's our farm planning tool. And we're very happy for our field advisors to talk to you about when they come onto your land about areas that they have identified as of high sediment risk. Now, obviously, models are only as good as the data and information that are fed into them. But look, I think when we walk the land with you, the science will probably agree with what you're seeing on your land. You'll know where things slip and where you do get some erosion. These tools are really just indicative to show us where we think we can see that from a science perspective. And really, it's a conversation between you and the landowner.
Great answer. Thank you very much. I attended that a marae meeting and information day that you had down at Tihana, and I thought I had registered interest prior to that in how you might help my land in the catchment. But I may not have, because I haven't heard from anyone. What's the backlog from an expression of interest to someone making contact with the landowner?
That's a great question, Lizette.
Yeah, so if I'd like to get in contact with you directly, if I'm looking at the right person without their mic on, what would normally happen is the expression of interest would come in and we would triage. So we would ring you and say, are you ready for a site visit now, or do you need to wait because you've got activities going on site that are a bit more seasonal and take your time? And we would send a field advisor out based around your availability more than anything. Sorry, who was making that comment?
David. We'll get in touch. We'll be in touch after this meeting, David, just to check, because there is a little bit of a backlog. You're right. We're working with a lot of landowners, and sometimes it does take us a little while to get hold of you. So we'll make sure we follow up, and we do first in, first served. So right now we're keen to get people to fill in that expression of interest form, but it's very short, by the way, for those who may be wondering about next Monday's call for expressions for interest. It's a really short form. We basically provide your name, what property, the location of the property you're interested in potentially working with us on, how to get hold of you, cell phone ideally, or email, and then generally speaking, what you're interested in working on. Is it riparian or is it into the hill country? So that's all we're really asking for in part. And so if in doubt, drop us a line. But David, we may have missed you, or you may be backed up in a queue. So we'll get hold of you after this meeting. Kia ora, and thank you for raising that.
Bye.
So as you can see, 22 months in, our digital tools are supporting us, and that's really, really important, because as we grow into this very, very large catchment, we need to make sure that we do support our landowners taking action. What it does mean is that our digital layers, our digital tools, our farm planning tool, is a very good place that we can actually validate our works that are happening on farm. Ideally, in time, landowners will upload their own photos of the projects. We know that is something that landowners want to participate in. And it keeps everyone on the same page around how a project's going, whether works are being completed, and it helps with payout to our landowners. Ultimately, KMR is an investment agency, and so we want to make sure that that very precious investment from the Crown and our regional council partners as well well taken care of. That's our objective. Kia ora.
Great. Were there any other questions from anybody? I've just put in the chat a link to the expression of interest form on our website or our email address, so you can email directly from there if you're on your computer or phone, and fill it out, and we'll get in touch as soon as possible. Is there anybody with any other specific questions around the program, or where we're up to, what we've got, or from information on the slides? If not, we can probably call. Yep, David has a question. David?
Thank you. Yes, I've actually put one in the chat box or the question box anyway. I think, Justine, we're meeting with you tomorrow afternoon anyway. I'm the lead planner for freshwater management at Auckland Council for my sins. One of the questions I've got, and I'll ask that now, is how are you monitoring potential sediment reduction as part of the overall project? How are you actually measuring success?
That's a great question. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the program, KMR has invested with our council partners in a significant set of digital tools. Mate Onakura, the whenua or farm planning tool, is one of them. It's the first. Auckland Council has developed another digital tool. It's an econometric model, an environmental economic model. It's called Tātakiwai, or a freshwater management or an accounting tool. What that will allow us to do when it's finished is to model the environmental outcomes or benefits from all of the projects that we're investing in, spatially, in real time, using real science data, including climate data, rainfall data, etc. That will allow us to be able to paint a really compelling picture for landowners, for communities, for iwi and hapu, and also for our funders, around what are the benefits that we're actually delivering, and we can model those out into the future. That tool, Tātakiwai, will also allow us to, in time, when it's ready, invest in areas of the land that are most erosion prone. So we've had some questions earlier from David around how is that high sediment, indicative sediment erosion potential layer being developed, and how does one know about where that is? Well, we'll be able to use Tātakiwai to really target our investment into those most erosion-prone areas across the catchment. Now, what we do know is that around half of the sediment comes from riverbanks, particularly in the Auckland region, and around half, of course, comes from hill country erosion. It's slightly more hill country erosion in the north and more riverbank erosion in the south. And so I think we'll end up with an investment strategy over the next couple of years where we'll invest in quite specific river system investments, remediations, projects, working with landowners, working with community, working with iwi and hapu in the river systems. Now, the Waikato River Authority has got to that point. They've been operational for nearly 13 years. We'll get there. We're not there yet. So right now we're an on-demand program, and we use our tools working with our landowners to really prioritise those sediment remediation projects on land. But you're absolutely right, David. We will draw on the Auckland Council tool adapted for KMR to really be able to model the benefits and outcomes into the future. Kia ora.
Peter, I believe, has a question about nitrogen.
Yeah. Actually, a couple of questions now. Just following up on that 700,000 tonnes. Nobody seems to know where that data came from in the first place. But what would be the impact of Cyclone Gabriel on that amount? And I guess given the increased exposure that land has now to the elements. That's my one question. Second question I've written in the chat here: sediment control helps to reduce phosphate levels, but what about nitrogen levels? And it would seem to me that it would be good to promote farming systems that significantly reduce their artificial nitrogen inputs.
Kia ora, great set of questions. Really happy to engage on that. There is peer-reviewed science that provides that estimated 700,000 tonnes. We're happy to make it available in the chat afterwards or via the website in time. We have an interim website at the minute, but yes, there's definitely peer-reviewed science. A number of very significant research has been done on that estimate. It's modelled, it's true. Sediment is a long-term contaminant, so we know that it's going to take decades to demonstrate scientifically and statistically that there are reductions, but that shouldn't get in the way of people taking action that, as you note, we're doing for other reasons too. When we reduce the soils washing off the lands and therefore the sediments coming into the harbour, we definitely reduce nutrients, it's well demonstrated. We definitely support through planting and fencing biodiversity outcomes, carbon storage and sequestration benefits, and other freshwater quality benefits from not having microbial contamination coming from the land. A lot of science around that, so we feel well positioned. So that the co-benefits, if you like, from KMR's investment are well researched, well demonstrated. And in fact, if Chris Phillips may be on the line from Manaki Whenua Land Care Research, he has a lot to say in this space as a national leader in sediment. And we have used SedNet NZ, the National Sediment Monitoring model to really draw on. There's a lot of hard mahi by the science system to support us in our work and to target how we invest that very precious support from the Crown and councils. Coming back to the cyclone impacts, you're absolutely right. We expect to see cyclone impacts having really spiked sediment levels in the harbour. That's natural. We are going to be able to demonstrate statistically over time the impacts and benefits of our investment. It will take a while to statistically demonstrate the benefits from taking action, but given all the other co-benefits, it's a no-brainer to do what we do anyway. Coming back to farm systems, yes, part of our the work that Lisette showed around whole of landscape remediations, they will potentially, with landowner interest and intent, support what I call more resilient farm systems. Even diversifying land use from pasture alone into pasture and farm forestry, or pasture and honey, pasture and potentially other values coming from the land, from trees in particular, we know that will make more resilient communities and diversify revenue streams into the future. That's good for everyone. So you're right, farm system resilience is something that we have an objective for. Our MOU sets 4 investment outcomes. The first, of course, is environmental, reducing sediment to half coming from the land, but there are also economic, social and connectivity outcomes that we are trying to achieve. But great set of questions, and we're very happy to share what we have when our new website goes live. Kia ora.
Yeah, I'd be particularly interested in that data around those 700,000 tonnes, because it's a number I've repeated, but I haven't been able to sort of validate it.
Certainly, no problems, David. Yeah, we're happy to help with that. I'll need to check it's published, but it's definitely been done and peer-reviewed to death, so all good.
Thank you.
There's also a question in the comments about how long it might take to hear back after an EOI is submitted. Lisette said, we check the Hono emails, checked them multiple times a day, and ideally we're trying to get back to people within 2 to 3 days, all going well. The EOI coming through, you should get a phone call from someone to sort of track down. Every so often we get a miswritten phone number, or trying to catch people sometimes who are out and about on the farm can be a bit of a tag team game, but we do try and get in touch with people within 2 to 3 days if they haven't already. So if it's longer than that, feel free to let us know and we can see what's going on. Great. Any other questions? I think we've got nothing else in the Q&A and nothing else in the chat, because we've talked about monitoring with David.
Perhaps one comment from myself, Ben.
Sure.
Just because we've got council online, great to see you, and we've got people asking questions about farm systems. So originally, Kaipara Moana remediation was set up to deliver freshwater farm plans. While we have some governance decisions next year around our particular role in that, For any landowners who are interested in working with us, our expectation is that it is really easy to pivot our sediment reduction plans into freshwater farm plans, working with councils and obviously subject to governance decisions. But our original funding intent from the Crown was that we would be able to support landowners who may need to have a freshwater farm plan for their farm system. Obviously, not all lands require a freshwater farm plan, so irrespective of our decision around those farm plans, we will continue to provide sediment reduction plans. And of course, for many community groups, marae, iwi hapu, for them, sediment reduction plans are all that they need because of the size of the lands or the type of mahi that they're working on, including on public lands, docklands, district council lands. But just in case people are wondering, that is our at least our aspiration and our intent when things become clearer around the policy, planning and regulatory systems. All right. Ben, any other things in the chat for us?
No, I think that's it. If you did have any other pressing questions, feel free to email us or fill out an expression of interest or get in contact via our website. We will be hosting, as just seen, a few more of these webinars that will look at probably some of the more specific parts of our program, either deep diving into either one of our grants, our planting guide, when we get changes through the program that showcase. If there's something you'd like to know more about and think there could be interest in a webinar, we'd love to hear from you as well. We're always interested in knowing how we're going and what would be of interest to you. We are also happy to one of us to come out and talk to you. So if you've got a conservation group or a community group, or you're wanting to get your community involved, we can get you in touch with a field advisor who could come and convert those on the fence maybe and make them into the willing so they can all get involved. It's a big project, it's a big location, and we're trying to get as many people involved in the kaupapa as we can for the benefit of future generations. So thank you very much for coming today. You'll get an email with a copy of this webinar link. You can re-watch it at your leisure or send it on to others. And we look forward to talking to you again. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Ngā mihi ki a koutou and kia pai tō rā. Thanks very much, everyone.